I'm sure a good 2/3 of all of you who clicked on this video are probably wondering why anyone would subject themselves to this infamously horrid experience they call a game. And, well, I actually have a personal reason as to why I have done that. You know, I am someone who strongly believes that the widest experiences yield the truest conclusions. And so that relates to my job here as someone who shares my thoughts on video games, in that I feel that my opinion is strongest when you all know it comes from a background of having played many different types of games from many different types of genres and many different calibers. So case in point, I've seen many people criticize so many modern games today, and while I certainly have my gripes with the creative direction and really lack thereof for some of these games, I very rarely would ever define a typical modern release as a terrible game. Because having the background of playing games that are truly awful, including this one we're going to talk about today, shows that at the very least, while you could argue that many modern games are quite boring and, well, indicative of studios who just aren't trying anymore, at least when it comes to the playability, they aren't so complex or difficult to get into. So when I picked up the 2006 reboot of Sonic the Hedgehog and the guy at my game store said, oh man, during the checkout, I went into this game not so much expecting to find an enjoyable experience beneath all of its rubble, but more so looking forward to how it would shape my perspective of what truly could be defined as a poor game. So what I'm going to share with you all today is going to come from the utmost objective point of view that I could offer as I played through this game, Sonic the Hedgehog, for the very first time on native Xbox 360 hardware. Sonic 06 doesn't take long to make its first bad impression. In fact, from the moment this game handed control to me, something already felt wrong. While the 7th generation made huge strides in terms of defining control schemes that just felt right for each of its respective genres, some of the earlier titles here definitely were still part of that experimentation phase. Sonic adheres to a frustrating, not even out of date, but just incompetent control scheme with no options whatsoever to manipulate them to fit any playstyle you feel comfortable with. The first issue we have here is camera control. This game operates with inverted camera controls. Now, in of itself, this wouldn't be a huge deal. I know some people personally who prefer to play their games with inverted camera controls, and they have a logical argument for why they prefer to play games that way. But these aren't inverted height controls. These are inverted left and right motion controls, meaning that if you want to look up and down, it's still up and down, but if you want to look left or right, it's right and left. I have never played a game like this where a developer intentionally inverted the controls for only the X-axis and left the Y completely untouched in the process. There are no options in the menu to adjust this either. I looked everywhere. I even double-checked my system settings to see if something there was amiss, but no, nothing. This is the way the game was designed and released, and we had developers easily patching games at this time as well, and there still remains no option to adjust this today. However, even if this was fixed, there'd still be issues with the camera. We have one of the worst cameras I think I've ever played in a game to this date. The camera follows Sonic, and the moment he moves, it tries to follow him from behind, but you have complete control to move it in any direction you want at the same time. So if you want to look left or right as you're moving, the camera is just constantly fighting you, and if you're trying to platform while looking around, well, good luck. Those who are susceptible to motion sickness, I swear to you, you won't last 5 minutes playing this game. While platforming, I could barely register where I had to go, and the camera will also sometimes switch to a more cinematic perspective, but still give you complete control of Sonic, making it incredibly easy to mess up the platforms of where you're supposed to be jumping to. This happens randomly and without warning, by the way, so it requires quick reaction to adjust your thumb placement and direction as the camera's constantly changing different angles. Unfortunately, this also gets in the way of combat as well, as the mechanics in Sonic 06 are extremely simplistic to the point where you just calmly time the A button so Sonic bashes into Robotnik's robots. In a platformer like this fuck up alone makes the game incredibly frustrating to play, and I would argue damn near unplayable at times. You have to quite literally relearn how to look left and right when playing this game, and then once you get past the inversion, you have to then continue to put up with the rapid motion and terrible camera movement whilst hoping to God you can just see the next platform you're supposed to be aiming at. You also have excessive load times in here, which just makes each screw up extremely frustrating. This game literally loads conversations with characters and then deloads and loads the stages afterwards. So if you want to talk to someone, you wait 30 seconds for no voice acting whatsoever, but speech bubbles that come up. And then you have to wait another 30 seconds once they're done to have the game actually load in the section you're supposed to play. But wait, maybe you'll even wait another 30 seconds after that so it could load the flyby of the stage that you're about to play. It's wildly unoptimized, and the frame rate is all over the place as well. It's jumping literally from the high 30s to the 60s and then back again. The game's speed is also tied to the frame rate, so you'll not only notice screen tearing as this happens, but the motion, Sonic will actually slow down with the animations while this is all happening. So that makes up your gameplay experience. All of this just contributes to something incoherent and frustrating, but what about the story? Well, viewer discretion may be advised for this next part. The world is basically on the brink of destruction, and Robotnik is at it again, and there's some advanced technology, some deceptive mind tricks, and a princess gets kidnapped, yada yada yada. You have 3 campaigns in this game, Sonic, Shadow, and Silver. However, I only suffered through the Sonic campaign, which took me about 5 hours, by the way. And after the nightmares that playing through that campaign caused me, I just couldn't bring myself to suffer any more through the rest of the game. The story is, at best, unremarkable. It's an end-of-the-world plotline involving all the usual suspects, and you also get this weird romantic side plot between Sonic and the princess character. Like the hedgehog and the human, what? Now, I don't mind getting down with the furries, but this is just uncomfortably gross, and it's cross-species shit. Like who approved this? Why? Why would you want this in the game? Now, everything is kind of presented in these actually decently rendered CGI cinematics, so at least they're not rendered with the terrible game visuals, which we'll move on to in a second, but just know that this plot is so out of control, it just defies what can even be considered a narrative at all. So after that terrifying revelation, let's take a look at the box art for Sonic the Hedgehog. You know, I actually do like the cover art for this one. It shows a pretty good view of Sonic sprinting. You got a nice title screen, good look at the spine there. On the back, we have all of our main characters and a bunch of screenshots and stuff. So, you know, it kind of hypes it up, and this was a game that was being very hyped at the time. We got our game disc here, which is pretty cool. It has the full face of Sonic, and then, you know, it's kind of like, I guess, symbolic because of his speedball there. And then look at the manual. Now, this isn't black and white, but we do have multiple different pages here. So, you know, it's got detail about some characters and control options and, you know, just basically your random stuff here. Pause menu, stages, different items, so on and so forth. So, you know, it at least goes into detail. It's not sort of, you know, basic there, but, you know, it's just got your necessary information, so to speak. So, anyway, it's a pretty cool cover and, you know, decently packed box, pretty much of the era here. Visually, Sonic the Hedgehog looks like a mess. You have decent art direction here, which is perhaps the only nice thing I could say about it, at least. I mean, it looks suitably Sonic. And the game operates with this hub-style world which connects you to different levels and stages, so at least from a creative perspective, you could appreciate what they were trying to go for here. And as for Sonic, he looks all right. You can see they tried to at least give you the illusion of fur, like they have this textured pattern on close-ups of his model, but the human rendering, like, who are these monstrosities? Now, you could also engage with the humans of this world, and they have like this weird animation playing, almost like they're desperately in line waiting for the bathroom or something. None of them have anything of import to say. In fact, there's no voice acting here. So when you walk up to them, you get this generic, hey, voice from like the intern at Sega America or something. And then they start this wacky inflatable arm flailing tube man gig, and I just make it stop. These characters are rendered with next generation PS2 graphics, so they look extra crispy when they're blown up to an HD resolution. The game just has these hard polygonal edges to almost every surface and to every character, and there's barely anything of interest to look at or explore around. At least some of the set pieces could be nice. You'll be running away from like fireballs, and there are certain stages where there's actually exciting things happening, and you just gotta pray that the camera's behaving well on that day. But visually, you could also see something went terribly, terribly wrong here. I do have one nice thing to actually say about this game, though, and that's the music. The music is actually good. It's not amazing. I'm not rushing out to buy the soundtrack or anything, but you know, it's fun and it has good variety. And some of the music sounds like they actually really wanted to try. And the main theme song, you know, it's pretty good as well. You also get this more cinematic style music, which does just enough to actually elevate the action, perhaps by a centimeter or two. But whoever was in charge of actually mixing the soundtrack, they perhaps damaged the score more so than helped it. It's annoying, but sometimes you will run into hearing the same song loop and loop and loop, and you'll just be exploring these areas, spending time in the hub world, and it's the same thing over and over and over again. But for what it's worth, it's fine. It actually is perhaps the only thing that didn't piss me off when I was playing this game. So take that with what you will. There's probably so much more I'm missing here as well, but you know, this game is infamously poor at this point, and everybody knows about it. I'm sure there are many of you who have never played this game, but know better than to give yourself the opportunity to try. So while I played this game and walked away having wasted perhaps 5 hours of my life, not feeling any different than most who played it, let me then circle back to the point I was making at the beginning of my video here. I just want you all to feel like when I share my thoughts on a game that it isn't coming from a place of ignorance, that it's the culmination of a personal experience with a wide perspective of many games from many different genres and many different eras. And I just quite frankly grow tired of seeing so many people who want to desperately be part of the conversation so much that they just regurgitate other people's opinions and they have like no stake in the game. I think that that's a huge issue when it comes to the online discussion surrounding video games. Often you'll see people just flat out say like that game sucks, and then you look at their play history and they play like 6 games a year or something. You know, this is why I purchase games like Forspoken on release. It's why I bought games like Redfall and Quantum Error. Because even though I may not end up liking these games any more or less than what's already been surmised by the masses who played it, without having tried those games, I earn no right to any opinion, and my perspective leans from a place of ignorance rather than experience. And I would suspect that if I only had experience playing great games, how could I then define what a bad game even is? Would I even know? So it's food for thought. But with that, I wanted to wish you all a wonderful day. Sonic has thankfully found his redemption in a recently released Sonic Frontiers title, which I did play and I did review, and I highly, highly recommend. It's truly a great game, and more so than makes up for just the mishaps of the 3D Sonic era. So I am very interested to hear what you all have to think if you did play this one or did not. But regardless, I hope you guys have a great day, and thank you so much for watching this video.